Hey everybody, it's Jack and Dan.
And today we're going to be talking about everyone's favorite breakfast beverage.
Coffee.
First thing we like to do is utilize some sort of steeper. These are fairly inexpensive. I got this at Drug Mart for $9.99 a couple years back, and I used to use a steel one before that. You can get a lot of different versions. The reason we like to use it is because you can only make a certain amount, and we don't want to overdo it with the caffeine and that kind of stuff by making a whole pot at a time. The other thing is, I just never felt like the inside of a coffee machine ever gets cleaned. And that's just one of those kind of OCD kind of things. I like the fact that I can take this apart, I can put it in the dishwasher, I can wash it, I can air dry it. It just feels to me like it's disinfected better. First thing we're gonna do is fill it up with the old refrigerator filter. Super easy, right, dude?
Yes.
On a side note, these refrigerator filters can be quite expensive. So we buy ours online, and we get them from a place called Water Drop. We're going to put a link in the description. We're able to get a 2-pack of these for half of what one of the manufacturers cost. They're that expensive. And so we get 2 of them. They last 6 months each, and they cost way less and last a lot longer, and it's exactly identical if you check through their specs and stuff like that. So anyway, that's a little side note about that. So I do not heat it. I just cold brew it. I just don't see the point. Any kind of coffee that you want to use is perfectly fine, to be honest with you. Obviously, you want to watch the amount of caffeine, so you want to measure it. You just don't want to throw it in. If you're going through something where you want to start decreasing the amount of caffeine, maybe you have high blood pressure, maybe you have anxiety, maybe you're trying to quit smoking and you're trying to cut down the stimulants that you're using to stop triggering your reward center, things like that, then start measuring your coffee. It's very simple. Put a tablespoon or so in. I do about a tablespoon and a half, and I just use like a regular ground or whatever. The only thing that I would recommend is try to get a lighter roast. I'm going to put a link in the description about acrylamide. If you haven't heard of acrylamide, it comes from cooking, things at a higher temperature, roasting. Coffee has acrylamide. French fries have acrylamide, things that are deep fried like that. So you want to be careful of those things. What I usually do then is you can either take some cinnamon or some pumpkin pie spice, or pumpkin spice really. We say pumpkin pie spice, it's really pumpkin spice. You take about a teaspoon of that. We did a video on this, and I will put that link in the description as well. And you just basically take about a teaspoon and mix it in. Okay, so you just take a fork or something like that, and you just take these grounds and the cinnamon or pumpkin spice or whatever, and you just kind of mix it in. I like to use a fork. And again, I just feel like it's just cleaner to do something like this, okay? It will stick to the fork a little bit, so you got to kind of try to tap it off and that. But there we go. So what you do then is you take your little steeper deal and you just push it in. Usually what I do is I push it down about halfway, and I just put it in the fridge. We're going to take it, we're going to put it in the refrigerator overnight. And tomorrow morning, you're going to have wonderfully awesome coffee. And what you can do in the morning is you can kind of push the steeper kind of like down, up and down a couple times. You do have to hold the top because it'll pop off. And that'll just kind of mix things in. But what the screen does there is it kind of keeps the grounds all at the bottom, and then you just pour it out. Turn the little thing and pour it out. And the next morning you've got coffee ready to go for you already. You don't have to make it in the morning. I'll put a little link in the description about our pumpkin pie spice, pumpkin spice. It's really easy to make, and the other thing is you don't want to add a whole bunch of garbage. So as an example, this is a very popular type of coffee, creamer, peppermint mocha. This was over someone else's house. They threw it away because it was empty, and we took it for this video. You can see on here, there's 5 grams of sugar in 1 tablespoon. There's 63 servings in here. That means if you used 1 serving a day, this would last you 2 months. Most people kind of just pour it in though. You're only really supposed to have about 25 grams of sugar a day, according to the American Diabetes Association, the American Heart Association, pretty much every health organization. So if you pour this in and you put 5 or more tablespoons in, which a lot of people do, you've got your whole day's worth of sugar just in your coffee. And we get used to that sweetness, and our threshold on our tongue goes higher and higher. And then we kind of require things to be so sweet. If you use something like this, which a lot of people don't realize, even if you just use milk, milk has 12 grams of sugar in every cup, which is quite a bit. Something like this has no sugar at all. It's unsweetened, it's vanilla, it's almond, it's delicious. These are like literally $1 at a place like Costco or something. You can put this in your coffee. Again, it's going to taste different than what you're used to. It's not necessarily going to taste bad. You can get a sweetened one and try that first. That'll only have about 7 or 8 grams of sugar in a whole cup. So if you were to add a whole cup, you'd be eating 7 or 8 grams of sugar instead of like 25 or 30 with pouring this in. You see the difference? It's a major difference in sweetness and a major difference in sugar. Sugar is a fast source of energy. Our bodies turn it into fat very quickly, and it raises our triglycerides. It's very simple. So we don't want to have that much sugar, especially not for breakfast. So try something like this. The other thing you can do is you can do a soy beverage. This will give you a little more protein. We usually use like a vanilla unsweetened. We ran out of it. But again, this only has, I think, 7 grams of sugar in an entire cup. So even if I poured a whole cup of this in and made like a latte, I would have almost about the same amount of sugar as 1 tablespoon of this. So try to use like a plant-based milk. You're not going to have any cholesterol. You're not going to have any saturated fat. You're not going to have sugar if you get unsweetened. Even if you do get sweetened, you have way less sugar. I usually use an unsweetened vanilla. If I run out of it, I will use this, about a half a cup, so I'm only getting 3 grams of sugar. Again, way less than even 1 tablespoon of this. The other thing, of course, that you want to be careful of is a lot of times people go the high-fat route and they go, oh, I'm going to put coconut milk or coconut cream or coconut oil. The problem with coconut, it is very high in saturated fat. 1 tablespoon of coconut oil has like 12 grams of saturated fat in it. I mean, this doesn't even really have any saturated fat in it, okay? So, you know, you got to kind of find your demon. Try not to get too much sugar, try not to get too much saturated fat. Again, I really like the soy milk. It's really good. And the nice part is it's got the protein. A lot of people like oat milk. They think it's very creamy. It has less protein, but you can also get, again, vanilla or sweetened and unsweetened. So try to check those things out. If you've never used a steeper or anything like this, it's really cool.
One of the things that's good that you can always put in too is a little bit of cocoa powder. This is a good thing to sometimes put in coffee grounds too. Now, what about kids? Should kids have coffee? Well, at the end of the day, a lot of times, Jack's grandfather, he used to have this saying for me and your uncles. He would say, hey, who wants to be a hero? And we'd be like, me. And he'd say, oh, go to the fridge, get me a beer, right? And on the way back, our little reward for bringing him a beer was we would sneak it open and take a sip, you know? You know how kids do stuff like that, right?
I guess, yeah.
So that's kind of what Jack does. Like if I say, hey, you know, bring my coffee, I left it in that room or something for me, he'll take a sip because, you know, it's an adult thing. At the end of the day...
It's not beer, but, yeah.
At the end of the day, you know, there's nothing really wrong with kids having some tea or some coffee or something like that. It's not something that they want to develop a habit of to become reliant on a stimulant like that. Really, no one should. But if you're going to have some, have a small amount and be careful of the amount that you're taking in. Measure it. And don't keep increasing it because you become more reliant on it. Try to decrease it if nothing else. There's many days where I don't drink any kind of coffee or tea or anything. Green tea is probably the healthiest caffeinated beverage you can have. Way more antioxidants, way less caffeine, and very cheap to buy, actually, especially if you buy a lot of it at once. So those kind of things are good to remember. But, you know, the energy drinks and all that kind of stuff, those are things to not start developing a habit of. Definitely stay away from that kind of stuff. They're very dangerous. And again, I've been a nurse many years, and I worked ER and I worked ICU. And how many stories have I told you about people that came into the ER having seizures, having TIAs, having CIAs, CVAs, having strokes. Bad stuff to get reliant on this much stimulant. So cut it down, guys, but if you're going to have some, at least try to have a small amount. Don't fill it full of sugar. Don't fill it full of fat.
And don't, like, suck it down right away. Don't just drink it all at 1 second.
Yeah.
Like,
sip it, savor it.
Sip it, yeah.
All right. We'll see you next time, guys. Have a great day.